back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And for
keep yourself in the loop of everything football on the Golden State Media Concepts Football Podcast. The latest news on and off the field, be it college football, Big Ten, SEC, Big 12, Pac-12, ACC to the NFL. We've got you covered. Listen to the Golden State Media Concepts Football Podcast.
And welcome everybody to another edition of the GSMC Football Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. As always, I'm your host, Kenneth Grunfelder, and it's great to have you guys here on this Thursday, August 29th. We have a lot to cover on the show today. Before I get into that, just want to remind you guys, if you want to tip or donate and make your comment recognized, go to the $ icon in the chat. If you do that, you will put out a super chat that I will acknowledge during the live broadcast, and it just makes the show more lively between myself, the host, and you guys, the viewers. Again, the alternative way to help out the show is going to the link, gsmcpodcast.net. We appreciate your guys' viewership each and every day, and however you can help out means the world to us as we put out content each and every day for you guys. So, I was not here yesterday. Trying to get these allergies out of the way. So hopefully that does help. I mean, I do sound a little better, but that's why there was no show yesterday, because on Tuesday, I mean, even someone in the comments, they sounded like I was crying, but I really wasn't. It's just, I've been dealing with such, my allergies have really been kicking my butt recently. So hopefully, by next week I'll be close to 100%. So, but that's why there was no show yesterday. So let's get into what we're going to talk about, though. So we're going to start off the show. We're going to talk about Russell Wilson being named the starter for the Steelers over Justin Fields. I'll also get into talking about Jacoby Brissett being named the starter over Drake May. That was the news broke about that a little while ago. So I'll talk about that. In the second part of the show, we'll talk about Dalvin Cook being signed by the Cowboys and just the impact on that. We'll also get into talking about just some of the notable cuts around the league as teams make their cuts to get down to the 53-man roster. Then we'll also get into talking about Hassan Reddick and Robert Saleh's comments on if he's going to play in Week 1 against the 49ers, because we are getting to that point, and he still has not reported. So I'll get into that. And then in the final part of the show, so I'm going to start doing these till we get to next Thursday, and that is doing predictions. So I'm going to go through each division. Now, I know I went through each team's schedule, but now I'm going to go through, the final standings that I have for each division. And then, Thursday, I'll talk about, who I think is going to go to the Super Bowl, things like that. So, we're starting to ramp up here as next week, season's going to start. So, really excited about that. So, let's get into the first topic, which is talking about the Steelers and Russell Wilson being announced the starter. Now, that doesn't really come as a surprise. I think we all pretty much knew that that was going to happen. I mean, Russell Wilson didn't really play that much in the preseason because he was dealing with that calf injury. And we have our concerns about the Steelers' offense because it hasn't looked great this preseason. But, it was made official that he is indeed going to be the starter. And, I've said this all along, too, that if he doesn't play well, he's going to be on a short leash. And Justin Fields could eventually take over for him. I think that is a real possibility. But as of right now, he's going to at least have the chance, Russell Wilson, to be the starter, and then you go from there. And I don't really feel strongly one way or the other. I mean, I do think that Russell Wilson should at least have the opportunity to start. And then if he shows that, he doesn't have it, then you opt to go to Justin Fields. Justin Fields right now at this point is the more athletic option. Russell Wilson, I think part of the reason why you're seeing that decline is he doesn't take off and run with it like he used to. Now that has to do with age. Because that's what made Russ so dangerous, is him to be able to improvise. And I don't think we really see that anymore. Doesn't use his legs as much. So that could be one of the things that leads to, Justin Fields eventually taking over. And the other thing too is both of these guys are not going to be on the team long term if they don't work out. Like, if they both prove to not be the options, then the Steelers can get out from under them and let them go. Like, they don't have a long-term commitment to either of these guys. But for the Steelers, you're hoping that that's not the case and that it does work out. Because if it doesn't, then you have to look for another option, whether it's through the draft, whether there's a quarterback that comes available. But the Steelers don't want to do that. One of these guys, they're hoping, is the solution. And I'm not going to sit here and tell you I definitely think one of these guys can be the solution, especially because one of them is in their mid-30s. But I do think the Steelers are in a better position than they were in last year with their quarterback room. And I do think that they're going to be a team that hangs around and tries to make the playoffs. And a lot of that has to do with their head coach, because the Steelers have never had a losing season under Mike Tomlin. And no matter what they trot out there, they always seem to be in the mix for the playoffs. Now, Steeler fans, they want to see them take that next step and win a playoff game because it's been so long. Enough of this, yeah, we made the playoffs, everything's good. No, it's not. Steeler fans expect more. This is a team that, got a lot of Super Bowls. And they want to see that again. They got the defense. They have a championship caliber defense, but they do not have a championship caliber offense. I like the pieces on the offense, but in order for the Steelers to take that next step and be in that certain class with some of the other top teams in the AFC, that offense really has to deliver. And I don't think it's going to be a top 10 offense. I don't think this is going to be an elite offense. Like I said, I like the pieces. I think they're going to be able to run the football effectively. And I do think the quarterback play is going to be better. But I still just don't think that this Steelers offense is going to be one of the top offenses in the league. And I don't think really anybody's saying that, but I'm just throwing that out there too. Whether it is Russell Wilson or Justin Fields starting. I don't think Russ had a bad year last year, but a lot of people point to those stats and say they're misleading because a lot of it was checkdowns. He can't really see the middle of the field. Stats don't tell the whole story. But either way, Russ didn't have a bad year. The Broncos at one point were in a position where, hey, maybe they could make the playoffs. So, if Russell Wilson can play like he did last year and not the year before in Denver, then the Steelers are going to be in the mix. But I think we can all say that the Seattle days are over. I mean, last night I had my fantasy draft with my friends, and in the background we had, every touchdown from the COVID season. And, when it would show any game with Russell Wilson throwing a touchdown or creating a touchdown, it was a different player. He's not the same guy. If the Steelers were getting that Russell Wilson, you could make the argument this team is a Super Bowl contender. But the fact of the matter is he's not that guy anymore. So we'll see what happens. I mean, I think week 1 against the Falcons, I think that is a winnable game for the Steelers. Kirk Cousins hasn't played in a long time. Coming off the torn Achilles, didn't play in the preseason at all, so he's going to be rusty, even though he's one of my quarterbacks. So I'm kind of hoping that doesn't happen. But he's going to be a little rusty. I think that is a game that the Steelers could get off to a good start and start off 1-0. But we'll have to wait and see. But let me know what you guys think, though, about this decision. Did the Steelers make the right decision? Also, I mean, I kind of took up the whole segment, but Jacoby Brissett was also named the starter for the Patriots. And, again, not too surprised over the move, but based off of how Drake May played, as opposed to Jacoby Brissett, maybe you were leaning towards possibly him getting the starting job, but that didn't happen. I guess the Patriots were still kind of set on starting Jacoby Brissett and then going to Drake May in the middle of the season. That's probably what's going to end up happening. But Drake May did look good in the preseason. So, for Patriot fans and the organization, they're hoping that he is the guy and he brings them back to the promised land. Back to being a, contender. But they still got a lot of work to do. There's a lot of rebuilding that they got to do. But, yeah, so Jacoby Brissett was named the starter. We talked about Russell Wilson being named the starter. Let me know what you guys think about those moves by those two teams. And with that now, we are going to take our first break of the show. And then when we come back, we'll talk about Dalvin Cook joining the Cowboys, what that means for them going into the 2024 season. So with that being said, stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Football Podcast.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign.
I wanna be the greatest. Everybody on the fake shit. I look around and feel like everybody is the fakest. I make this every day and I'm impatient, hoping one day I blow up from the basement. Statement, the top is so vacant. I don't hear shit that I think is amazing. Waiting for my day when I'm playing sold out shows for 1,000 faces. Hey, give me that crown, get in my way and to be put down. It ain't your place, all this my town. If I want that shit, then I'll get it right now. I'm losing it, the noose it fits. I'm losing shit, a stupid myth. You choose to live or choose to dip. You choose to fight or lose your grip and lose a gift. Oh,
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind?
All right, and we are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast, and for the second part of the show, we are going to talk about Dalvin Cook joining the Cowboys. So he was going to Dallas to visit the Cowboys, and I know he did have some connection with the Cowboys earlier in the offseason, but nothing ended up happening. But now recently went for a visit, and he did indeed sign with the Cowboys. And last year was a tough year for Dalvin Cook. He was released by the Vikings, and the Jets ended up picking him up, and it just did not work out for him with the Jets. These are his stats with the Jets last year: 67 carries, 214 yards, no touchdowns. Now, the Jets ended up letting him go, and he signed with the Ravens. And he had that big run for like 20 yards against the Texans, and that was it. So he's looking to turn back the clock with Dallas. Now, it's funny because looking on social media, you see, wow, Dalvin and Zeke in the same backfield. In 2019, this would be like the best backfield in the league. And it really would. But that's not the case. Both players are a little bit older now, and you're not going to get the same level of productivity out of those two players. I mean, especially, I don't know. I mean, Zeke, I think, will be good in goal line situations, and if they're trying to pick up a first down. But, Zeke is not the same player. But, and Dalvin's not the same player either. But I don't think Dalvin is completely done yet. Now, I think Dalvin's best days are behind him. I agree with that 100%. But I'm willing to give Dalvin another chance just because of the situation that he was in last year. Because he was supposed to be playing in an offense that had Aaron Rodgers. Rodgers gets hurt. They brought him in as an insurance policy for Breece Hall. Because the Jets didn't know if Breece Hall was healthy because he's coming off of his, torn ACL. And we knew right away from the Week 1 game against the Bills last year that Breece Hall was healthy with those two big runs that he had. The one to start the game and the one a little bit later in the game when Zach Wilson took over. And it looked like he was going to take it to the house. So you had that. But also you had the Jets' offensive line as well. That was not good. So I just feel like a combination of all those things led to the kind of season that Dalvin had with the Jets. And that I'm willing to give him another chance. Because now he's going to a team like the Cowboys that has a good offensive line. And there's really no clear RB1 on the team. Like, yes, they have Zeke, but you also have JioSaavn and Rico Dowdle. Like, Rico Dowdle is going to be someone that comes in on third down. I mean, JioSaavn's a young guy, but is he going to step up? I don't know. And like I said, they brought back Zeke. So, right, the Cowboys' backfield is a question mark. And I feel like Dalvin could take advantage of that, and maybe he finds the fountain of youth again and plays like how he did his, not exactly like his last year in Minnesota, but similar to that. Because I just find it hard to believe that he just completely fell off a cliff. I really do think a lot of it had to do with the situation that he was put in. But, it happens. I mean, the running back position, these guys age very quickly. But like I said, I'm willing to at least give him another chance with a better team. And the Cowboys need it because, their backfield, they got to be able to run the ball a little bit. It can't be Dak throwing the ball 50, 60 times a game. I mean, he's definitely not going to be throwing 60 times a game, but you don't want it all to be on Dak. Now, you got CeeDee Lamb back, so at least that's squared away. So the Cowboys' passing game is going to be good. But got to have a running game to rely upon. And the Cowboys usually have a good running game. I mean, Tony Pollard left in free agency, signed with the Titans. But usually, throughout Dak's whole career, he's had a solid running game to back him up. The prime Zeke years. 2022 was probably the best year because, Zeke was still, he wasn't the same as he was his first couple of years in the league, but you had him and you had Tony Pollard, who went off in 2022. And a lot of people point to this, that Pollard probably works better in a committee where he's not, he gets more of the workload, but you have a number 2 back that can come in and take some of that workload off of him. Because last year, Pollard was the guy. There was really no number 2 option. They had, some of the guys that are on the team now were on the team last year, but you didn't have that Zeke to balance it out. But also, he was coming off of, his injury from the playoff game against the 49ers. And we'll see how he is now in Tennessee with Tajay Spears. That could be a nice little duo that they got in Tennessee. And I drafted Will Levis as my 3rd quarterback. So I'm hoping he has a big year because if Brock Purdy or Kirk Cousins doesn't do well or someone gets hurt, Will Levis is going to have to be the guy that steps up. So I'm hoping for a big year out of Will Levis. But yeah, so Tony Pollard leaves. You still got, like I said, you still got Dowdle, you still got Deuce Vaughn. But there's question marks there. And I think, it's a low-risk signing, bringing in Dalvin. If it doesn't pan out, he's gone. I just think it's interesting that it took this long for him to sign with the team. But that's just how it played out. So we'll see how it goes. Last year, Zeke, I think, had a little over 600 yards rushing with the Patriots. But I don't know. I'm really curious to see how their backfield shapes out. And it's not going to be easy the first week because they're taking on a Cleveland Browns team in their stadium, and that crowd is going to be in a frenzy. Defense is really good, and I think that's going to be a tough game for the Cowboys. I really do. But yeah, we'll see how it goes. But I'm willing to give Dalvin at least one more chance. If he goes out there and he plays similar to how he did with the Jets, then that's it. But I'm going to say that he still has a little bit of gas left in the tank. And I think in a better situation with the Cowboys, I do think that you'll see a different kind of Dalvin and not the Dalvin from last year. Because his last year in Minnesota, in 2022, 264 carries, 1,173 rushing yards, and 8 touchdowns. And he averaged 4.4 yards. Last year, he averaged 3.2, which was a career low. 2020 Dalvin, which I told you guys we were watching the 2020 highlights, 1,557 rushing yards, 312 carries, which was a career high, averaged 5 yards per carry, 16 touchdowns. That was his best year. And then it's kind of been a slow decline since then. But I think there's some juice left. How much? We'll see. But it's a low-risk, high-reward signing by the Cowboys. And I think he could step in and be... Well, I think amongst the running backs that they have, I think he might be the best running back. Unless Deuce Vaughn shows that, the young guy, unless he shows that he could be the one that takes over, I think Dalvin is the best running back in that room right now. So we'll see what happens. But let me know what you guys think, though, about that signing for the Cowboys. How do you feel about it? Like I said, low risk, high reward. He's in a better situation if he gets the bulk of the carries. Maybe that gets him into a rhythm. Because that's the other thing too. I mean, Breece is the lead guy. Last year, Breece is the lead guy. You're coming in at certain points to take the workload off of him, and you just can't get into a rhythm. So that's the other thing too. But I mean, you could sit here and say, well, you're giving Dalvin a bunch of excuses, and maybe I am, but that's just how I see it. I'm willing to give him another chance, at least one more chance. But before we go to break, I just want to remind you guys again to tip or donate and get your comments recognized. Make sure to go to the little $ icon in the chat. That will create a super chat that you put out on the live broadcast. I will acknowledge it during the live broadcast. And it just makes the show more interactive between myself, the host, and you guys, the viewers. We appreciate your guys' viewership each and every day as we put out content. And any kind of donation that you can make to the show means the world to us. And also, the alternative way to help out the show is also going to the link, GSMCpodcast.net. So when we come back from our next break, we will talk about some of the notable cuts from this past week. Some of the big names that were let go, and I'll give you my thoughts when we come back from break. So with that being said, stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Football Podcast.
Looking for your daily fix of sports talk without having to pay for it? GSMC Sports Network is available on YouTube. Just search GSMC Sports Network. Get your fix of daily sports talk shows on YouTube, absolutely free. NFL, college football, NBA, MLB, MMA, UFC, fantasy football, and so much more. GSMC Sports Network has shows running all day long, with new sports shows starting every 2 hours. Just like on your favorite cable sports channel, except GSMC Sports Network is absolutely free. Just search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube to catch one of your new favorite shows, like the GSMC College Football Podcast, Chip Shot Football Podcast, Hoops and Heels Women's Sports Podcast, GSMC Basketball Podcast, and so many more. Check it out for yourself. GSMC Sports Network, now available on YouTube absolutely free. Search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube right now.
All right, and we are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And for the third part of the show, we're going to take a look at the cuts around the league from each team. We'll look at some of the big names that were let go of. I did want to start off with the Chiefs because, I mean, I'm not gonna go through every single team, but some notable names that were let go that I wanted to discuss. So the Chiefs did let go of Kadarius Toney, and also Justin Ross as well, another receiver that they had as well. And I mean, I don't think there's really any surprise by that. He was brought in. They traded. I think it was a third-round pick to get him from the Giants, and it just really never worked out. He would show flashes here and there, like especially in the Super Bowl. Had that punt return, had a touchdown. But the consistency was not there. I mean, last year there was just there was consistency, but he was consistently bad. And because I thought when they first acquired him, he wasn't like he showed flashes, had that big performance in the Super Bowl, did have some good games for them during the regular season, but last year was just a mess from that first game on. And I think that's why you saw at certain points Patrick Mahomes was just visibly upset on the sidelines, and that's why part of the reason why he threw that tirade after that game against the Bills, because it's stuff that Kadarius Toney did. First game of the year, crucial drops. One of them led to a pick six by Brian Branch. I brought that up recently. But there was another play last year where, he catches a ball. I think it was, what was it? Was it on third down? It was second or third down. Whatever it was. He catches that ball. They're in field goal range. Harrison Butker kicks a game-winning field goal, and they win that game. Against the Patriots, that was another instance where Mahomes looked visibly upset, and that led to an interception. Toney bobbled the ball, and the Patriots got an interception off that. But the big one, like I mentioned, when Mahomes really flipped out, was against the Bills. When he lined up off sides, and they scored a touchdown, and you thought, wow, they pulled off a miracle against the Bills in the regular season. Because, the Bills, they have their problems with the Chiefs in the postseason, but in the regular season, they beat them. And Toney was lined up off sides, and the play got called back, and that was it. And the Chiefs ended up losing that game. So I'm just not surprised by it. And also just, getting into it with Giant fans on Twitter, it's just not somebody you really want to have on your team. Now, they tried to make it work, but, it's just the play on the field was not there. And who knows if he's going to get another shot. Maybe he does. I mean, I thought after that game in Dallas that he had again with the Giants, where he had over 100 yards, and he was electric in that game. And I was like, wow, he looks like he's going to be a good player. But that was like his peak. And maybe, I guess, the Super Bowl performance as well. But that really, he peaked with that game he had in Dallas. He never really lived up to it. And Giant fans really were not in love with that pick either. There were other areas that the Giants needed to address. But Dave Gettleman decided to take Kadarius Toney. And it just didn't pan out. And I don't know where it was. It might have been on Twitter. But there's only, with the Giants, there's only 8 players remaining that were drafted by Dave Gettleman on the current roster. Everybody else is all Dable and Shane. They really flipped this roster over. I mean, Dave Gettleman really left the Giants in a bad spot. So much so that, like I said, there's only 8 players that Dave Gettleman drafted that are on the team still. But, yeah, so Kadarius Toney is gone. I did want to bring up, actually, so A.J. Dillon of the Packers is going to be out for the year. Neck injury. Season-ending IR. And they brought him back. I'll be honest, I really was not too familiar with this. They brought him back on, I think it was like a qualifying offer. Like they have in baseball. I had no idea that was a thing in football. But they brought him back, to be the RB2 to Josh Jacobs. And now he's going to be out for the year. So his Packer career is over. You hope that this neck injury, I don't know the severity of it, so I hope it's not career-threatening. But, when you hear a neck injury, that, it's concerning. I mean, David Wilson of the Giants, remember him? Had him for a few years, and he had a neck injury, and he's been out of football. Ended up retiring. So I wish him nothing but the best. It's an unfortunate injury, but yeah. So the Packers did draft a running back, Marshawn Lloyd. They also have Emmanuel Wilson as well. So that's going to be their backfield. Well, besides Josh Jacobs, of course. But A.J. Dillon, they brought him back to be that RB2 to him. And he's going to, like I said, he's out for the year now. But I did want to bring that up. Also, to go back to the Patriots, so they actually let go of Bailey Zappi, which I can't really, again, another move that I really was not surprised about. They drafted 2 quarterbacks. They took Drake May. They took Joe Milton. They probably, they like what they see out of Milton more so than Zappi. And then, of course, you have Jacoby Brissett, who's now the starter going into the year. So, yeah, they kind of left no room for Zappi. Had his moments. I wanted to get, my friend and I wanted to get the Don't Worry, Be Zappy t-shirts. I did want to get that, but ended up not happening. And like I said, showed flashes, and you thought, oh, maybe, Zappy's the guy instead of Mac Jones. Never ended up happening. So, if a team needs a quarterback, he's someone that could potentially, be someone that fills up a quarterback spot. Trying to see if any. So the Commanders, it was interesting. Well, they cut Sam Hardman, they cut Trace McSorley, a couple of quarterbacks there. So the Commanders, they brought in Martavis Bryant. And I have a Martavis Bryant jersey, believe it or not. And you're probably saying, why? Yeah, a lot of the jerseys that I have now, they're all expired, basically. I mean, the ones that I have in my closet, I have, I got guys from the Chiefs, I got 49ers. Now, I say that, I hope nobody goes, oh, you're a bandwagoner. No. I just get the jerseys because I just like to get, some of the players. As do a lot of people. For the Super Bowl, depending on who's in it. I mean, the Chiefs have been in it every single year, it seems. At least I got a jersey to wear. It's more of just collecting jerseys. But like I said, a lot of the jerseys that I have, they are expired, and a lot of them were bad purchases. Martavis Bryant was one of them. Because Martavis Bryant's window of being a good player was so small. It was shut pretty quickly. Because he was in and out of the league constantly. I mean, I really just go back to that playoff game against the Bengals when he caught the ball and in between his legs and did a somersault. That's really the only thing I could think of as to why I got a Martavis Bryant jersey. But yeah, so the Commanders brought him in, and he's cut. He's done with them. So I don't know if he's gonna. I really don't know if he's gonna get another shot. I really don't. He bounced around the league a little bit after the Steelers. Again, was in and out of the league. Was with the Raiders for a little bit. The Cowboys, they brought him in. So I don't know if he's going to get another shot. But that's another notable name. Maybe if a team's desperate, maybe they could go to him. When it comes to the Giants, and I'm seeing now the Bears did let go of Austin Reed. If you've been following Hard Knocks, he's been kind of a focus. So that's unfortunate there, but kind of makes sense. Tyson Bagent wasn't getting cut, and Brett Rippon didn't look bad. Hasn't looked bad either. So not really surprised there. But with the Giants, they let go of Isaiah Hodgins. And Isaiah Hodgins, they brought him in 2022, and him and Daniel Jones really built up a nice rapport. And, he had a touchdown in the playoff game against the Vikings. He played well for them. But last year, wasn't as good. I mean, the other thing, too, is the quarterback position for the Giants was just a mess. So I'm not really, surprised that he was let go, because the Giants got Jalen Hyatt, they drafted Malik Neighbors, Wan'Dale Robinson, like those are your top three, and then you got Darius Slayton. I'm trying to think of who else they have. A couple other guys that they got that it got a little, the wide receiver room got a little crowded for the Giants, and Hodgins just was not going to make the team. But I just want to look up. Well, Gunnar Olszewski they got to return kicks. But yeah, it was not going to happen for Hodgins. We'll see if a team maybe picks him up. But yeah, that's pretty much, some of the notable cuts. Again, I wasn't going to go through every team. I mean, some guys I spent more time talking about than others, but ESPN has like the full list of all the guys that were cut. So, if you want to take a look at that, I mean, you could basically look it up wherever. Just look up, what your team ended up doing, what other teams ended up doing. But yeah, so I know also Frank Gore Jr., he was cut by the Bills, but I think he got signed to the practice squad. I know that was a surprise. For most people were surprised by that because he performed well in the final preseason game. So, yeah, but I think he did get signed by the practice squad of the Bills, or to the Bills practice squad. So, yeah, let me know what you guys think, though, about some of the cuts that we went over. What was one that surprised you? So we're going to take our next break. When we come back, we'll talk about Haason Reddick, talk about some things that Robert Saleh said recently, get into more of that discussion when we come back from our next break. So with that being said, stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Football Podcast.
For the best and latest podcasts available anywhere, go to the podcast app on your cell phone and type in GSMC to access free content-rich podcasts on health and wellness, book reviews, sports, entertainment, relationships, social media, movies, technology, finance, and even weird news. Subscribe and download the GSMC Podcast Network's family of shows, available everywhere podcasts are found.
All right, and we are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast, and for the fourth part of the show, we're going to talk about Haason Reddick. Just some things that Robert Saleh had to say on his status for Week 1. I did want to bring up one thing, regarding Deshaun Watson. So, the Browns restructured his contract, which will create $36 million in cap space. So, Cleveland converted $44.79 million of Watson's $46 million for 2024 base salary into a signing bonus. So, that's good for the Browns because that contract has been really bad so far, and they're really hoping for a big year out of Watson because, like I said, that contract has not panned out the way they've hoped. But I just wanted to bring that up. So, now let's get back to Haason Reddick. So, he's still not with the team. Their game is the following Monday, September 9th. So, what's going on? Like, is he gonna report? Is he going to play? What's going on? The way things are right now, it doesn't seem like that's the case. Now, Robert Saleh seems optimistic that he is going to, that, there's still time for him to report. But, I mean, right now it doesn't look like it. So Robert Saleh said, now this is on Tuesday, about the possibility of him suiting up for week 1. Saleh said, I'm assuming he's in phenomenal shape. He's a veteran. He knows what he needs to get ready. He's had success in multiple buildings and multiple schemes with multiple coaching staffs. So he's going to know what he needs to do to be ready for week 1. So he still has plenty of time. Also, Saleh said, did it look good? I bet it looked good. Because he was doing drills. In the article, he's doing drills with his personal coach. And Saleh was commenting on that. And they asked if, he spoke to Reddick recently. He said, no, I've just been focusing on the guys that have been here. Now, Saleh says there's still time. It's not really that much time. Not plenty of time. The game is in less than 2 weeks. This guy's got a report. And he hasn't. And it's very odd. Like, I don't think I've ever seen this before, where a team trades for a player that, is looking for a new contract, and that player ends up not reporting to that team and is now holding out with this new team. And there's a possibility he doesn't play. And what'll make it even more unique is if the Jets go, all right, well, this didn't work out, and they end up trading him to someone else. Make it someone else's problem. It's just very odd. The whole situation is very odd. It's and the Jets are getting blasted all over the place by this move. Because how is it you bring in somebody that's looking for a new contract without, giving him a new contract, and now he's holding out? I don't know. Again, we're not going to know. I don't know what the thought process was. I mean, a lot of people like the move. I like the move as well. That was a position of need because Bryce Huff left in free agency to go sign with the Eagles. So the Jets needed someone to fill in that role. And Hassan Reddick, who's an older player, but still productive, the Jets bring him in, and he was looked to be that piece. And he hasn't shown up because of this contract. But again, it's another headline that makes the Jets look foolish. And this is a big year for them. They got a lot of expectations. You're hoping that Rodgers plays more than 4 snaps in the regular season, which I think he will. But fingers crossed, because, again, every time I especially playing the 49ers week 1, every time I'm going to see him drop back, I'm going to, look away. Because I don't want him to get hit and then get hurt. But this is just another distraction. The Jets don't need this right now. And I feel like a lot of people say that exact phrase a lot between Aaron Rodgers and now this. The Jets don't need this. But it's just another thing on their plate that, you got to see Robert Saleh get up there and meet with the media and say, yeah, this is not a distraction. We're not worried about this. We're concerned about the guys in the building. Behind closed doors, this has really got to be eaten at them. Because it's like, can we just get to the season? Can we just not have something come up every 2 seconds? But that's not the case. This is they're going to continue to deal with this stuff. And I don't know what the resolution is going to be. Is Hassan Reddick finally going to get that new deal and we're off and running? Or is this going to leak into the regular season? It seems like it's going to go into the regular season. And I understand players want to get paid. I get it. Get your money. But at the same time, he's constantly getting fined because he hasn't shown up. So you're losing a lot of money. But again, I bring this up. Le'Veon Bell held out for an entire season. And look what ended up happening to him. He goes to the Jets, but he wasn't the same player. And he flamed out, and he was done. 2019, yeah, like I said, played with the Jets. 2020 was with the Jets, then went to the Chiefs, but really was a non-factor on the Chiefs. Had a cup of coffee with the Ravens and the Buccaneers the following year, I believe, and then he was done. And Hassan Reddick is an older player. What if you step out there? Yeah, he's still training, of course, keeping himself in shape. But, what if you go out there after missing all this time and you end up getting hurt? Now, if he gets that new contract, well, he's got that. But you're risking a lot by holding out. I get it, but at a certain point you got to say, all right, I got to step out on the field. Because otherwise I'm not going to get a new contract. And especially because he's an older player. So it's a strange situation, and again, the Jets are getting criticized up and down for this move. I know when I was listening to Sports Talk Radio here, there was a Jet fan that called into the Michael Kay show, and they said that Joe Douglas is a top 5 GM. I don't know why he said that. I mean, he believes it, but now that's not to say that Joe Douglas is not a good GM, because he has, look at the draft classes, but the Zach Wilson draft pick, there were a lot of, he also had his misses, and the biggest miss, like I said, is Zach Wilson. So that alone, that decision right there to take Zach Wilson with the number 2 overall pick, that does not make you a top 5 GM. Again, I mean, look, he drafted the offensive rookie of the year and the defensive rookie of the year in Sauce Gardner and Garrett Wilson. But the Zach Wilson draft pick kind of balances everything out. That's just my opinion. Now, again, I don't think he's a bad GM. And I think had the Jets had the number 1 overall pick in 2021, they would have took Trevor Lawrence. And we probably don't even have this conversation. But they got put in a bad spot with that. So, and they really liked Zach Wilson. So, but I don't think he's a bad GM, but I don't think he's top 5. Do not think he's top 5. I mean, we'll see what happens this year. I mean, look, they traded for Aaron Rodgers too, and if Rodgers doesn't get hurt, I think Rodgers getting hurt also, but how are we gonna predict that? We had no idea that was gonna happen. So we'll see what happens, but the Hassan Reddick stuff, they gotta hope that he reports and they eventually get something done here. Now, I think even if the Jets don't have him, I don't think it's like the end of the world for them because they still got a very good defense. But he helps this defense. He makes this defense better. And he was supposed to be the replacement for Bryce Huff. If he doesn't report, well, other guys got to step up. So, let me know what you guys think, though, about the Hassan Reddick stuff. Do you think he's going to end up playing in Week 1? Right now, it doesn't look like it, but we'll see. So when we come back from our final break of the show, I'll talk about the NFC East. I'll predict that division, how that division is going to shape out. I'll give you the records that I have for the teams when we come back. So for one final time today, stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. All right, and we are back here on the GSMC Football Podcast. And for the final part of the show, we're going to get into talking about the NFC East, who I have winning that division, how I see the other teams finishing in that division. So let's get right into that. So I know I went through each team's individual schedules, but now we're kind of just going to go through the standings and how I see him shaping out. So this is what I have for the NFC East. So I got the Commanders finishing in last, Giants finishing in third, Cowboys in second, and the Eagles in first place. Now, the Giants, how the offense has looked this preseason, I'm a little concerned. But I do think the defense is going to be a solid unit this year. And I think there are things to like about the Giants. I think the offensive line is going to be improved. It looks like it, like the way it's been in the preseason, it's improved. Devin Singletary's not going to be Saquon Barkley by any means, but I do think he's going to be productive for them. And I think the quarterback play will be good enough where the Giants are not going to... It's not going to be like the big... Well, it's hard for me to say that based on how Daniel Jones has played, but I don't think the quarterback play is going to be as bad as we may have seen in the preseason. For the Commanders, for me, I know there's people that think they could be a team that can surprise some some people. And Jane Daniels has looked good in the preseason. But I don't know. I'm still not buying in on the Commanders that they're going to be better. Well, maybe they'll be better. I gave them 4 wins. Maybe that's a little too low, but I don't know. I just don't see them finishing ahead of the Giants just because the Giants have owned them in recent years. And I wasn't a fan of the Dan Quinn hire. I still think the defense is not going to be good because their secondary was not good last year. They were giving up so many big plays. I don't know. I'm just not really buying into the Commanders this year. But I could be wrong. I think it all depends on how Jane Daniels plays. He could go if he goes out there and plays really well. And Terry McLaurin, you hope for his sake that they find his quarterback because that's really he's been playing with many different quarterbacks. And some of the other young guys, and they traded Jahan Dotson too, which people were surprised about that. They're hoping for big things out of Luke McCaffrey. What kind of threat do they have at tight end? I know they brought in Zach Ertz, but Zach Ertz is past his prime. I don't know. I'm not really that big on the Commanders, but we'll see. If Jane Daniels plays well, maybe they do surprise people and they finish with a better record than what I have here because this is the record they finished with last year. The Cowboys at 11-6. I feel like they take a little bit of a step back, even though it's one game worse than what they finished with last year. They didn't really make a ton of moves. One could argue they got worse this offseason. I mean, they just brought in Dalvin Cook now, so we'll see how that helps them out. I mean, I went through all that at the beginning of the show, towards the beginning of the show. But I do think with Dak and CD, Micah Parsons, there's a lot of stars on this team. They're going to have their good regular season. They're going to beat up on bad teams. They're going to have a good regular season. And they're going to be a playoff team. I have them as one of the wild card teams. But it is interesting listening to different people and seeing that, some people have Dallas having a losing record and missing the playoffs. Others have them, finishing in first place in the division. My one friend has them going to the Super Bowl. Mainly because their reasoning was they wanted to be different and not just have Chiefs 49ers. And I don't want to do that either, but we'll get into that next week. But it is interesting how this offseason has kind of sent many people in different directions on how they feel about Dallas. But I just think there's too much talent on this team. I do worry about the depth. That is something to be concerned about. Because, if guys start getting hurt, already Deron Bland is going to be out. And he was a big part of their team last year. With all the interceptions and pick sixes that he had. You worry about the depth. But if everybody stays healthy, this team is going to be a good team in the regular season. Now, when it comes to the playoffs, it's a completely different thing. But when it comes to the regular season, this team is good. This team will get its fair share of wins. But I just think the Eagles, right now, they're the most talented team in this division. You add Saquon Barkley. You revamp that defense. They traded for Jahan Dotson. And I just feel like there's too much talent on this team. And I feel like that supersedes everything else in this division. And I feel like that is going to... They're not going to have the same amount of problems that they had last year. But I think what people are worried about is the coaching. The relationship between Nick Sirianni and Jalen Hurts. Jason Kelsey not being there. Fletcher Cox not being there. Those are two big pieces. Two leaders that they are not going to have in that locker room. And the impact can be felt. But I do think Saquon being there, I think Saquon's going to, he even said it. He's going to take on a leadership role. Jalen Hurts is going to take on more of a role. You still got Brandon Graham there for one more year. Big Dom, he's there. The security guard. I think the collapse from last year is a thing of the past. I think the Eagles are going to be back to how they were when they started off 10-1, and maybe even that team that went to the Super Bowl. They got 2 number 1 receivers on the team, arguably. A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith. Solid tight end, Saquon. Good offensive line. Jalen Hurts, there's people that are going to criticize him and say he's not very good. I think he's a solid quarterback. Last year, you got to cut down on the turnovers. But I think he's a solid quarterback, and I think the defense is going to be better. Bringing Bryce Huff over from the Jets, Devin White, you drafted Cooper DeJean and Mitchell. Now, James Bradbury, it's being reported, suffered a lower leg injury in practice, and he'll miss approximately 6 to 8 weeks. Now, he had a rough year last year, as opposed to the year before. But that's a big loss in the secondary. They brought back C.J. Gardner-Johnson. You still have Darius Slay. So, we'll see how it goes. But I think the Eagles are going to be back to being the team they were before the collapse. When the 49ers, the 49ers just sent them in disarray. So, we'll see. But yeah, I got the Eagles at 12-5, Cowboys 11-6, Giants 7-10, Commanders 4-13. So, let me know what you guys think though about that. How do you see the NFC East shaping out? It's mainly going to come down to Dallas and Philly for the division. The Commanders and the Giants are still trying to figure it out. The Giants are hoping that they're more competitive and they don't finish with a 7-10 record. But I was going back and forth between 6-11, 7-10, but I'm being generous and giving them 7 wins. So we'll see how it goes. The Commanders, I could definitely see them, going against my my win total and surprising people, but I'm gonna still stand firm on their win total and say that they go 4-13, which again is the same record that they had last year. So, but yeah, let me know what you guys think though in the comments. So yeah, that is pretty much it for the show for today. Thank you guys for sticking with me as I still try to battle what I got going on here with my allergies. Definitely sound better today than I did on Tuesday. I did want to go over the comment that was left to me on one of the videos, on one of the segments, because again, the way I sounded, yeah, you probably thought I was gonna cry, the way I was talking, and you can still kind of hear it the way I'm talking right now. So, this was by, I hope this is the right one. Yeah, so this is from Anthony Lopez-T1M, and he said, "Why?" And this is on the Sports Network YouTube channel, on my Steelers segment. Mike Tomlin, talking about the QB competition. So he said, "Why do you sound like you want to cry when you read? Read with confidence. You got this." And again, going back to that show and just listening to it, that whole show, I just sounded like I was gonna cry, the way I sounded. I still sound like it now, but it's a little bit better. So, but yeah, hopefully by next Thursday when we preview Ravens Chiefs, I'll be close to 100%. I don't know. There's some kind of bug that's going around. I got some family members that have been dealing with a cough and for a while, so I think I might have got that from them. But yeah, I think I'm starting to get to the other side of it, which is good, because I can't be out for a week with this, but slowly but surely I'm getting there. So I'm not crying. I'm crying tears of joy because football's back, but I'm not crying. It's just I got some stuff going on that needs to get out of my system. So again, thank you guys for bearing with me. Again, check out all the other shows, give the other shows some love, and until then, I'm Kenneth Grunfelder signing off from the GSMC Football Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. Have a good day, and I will talk to you guys tomorrow. Take care.
Let's go. I wake up to a little bit of drool on my pillow, feel like it's gonna be a bad day. Yeah, I'm tired of shit, and the coffee ain't hit yet, damn, ain't that great.